Okay, this is the Beyond the Dojo podcast. I'm Lauren.
I'm Jeremiah.
And we have a guest. This is Mr. Sean Padgett. Hi, Sean. Yay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello. Hi, Sean. So we just had our once a month black belt class, which we just started back up after all of the COVID nonsense. So last month Jeremiah taught, right? You taught last month?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay, and then this month we asked Sean to teach, so he just shared with us for 2 hours, and it was lots of fun.
Great class. I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
It was challenging for sure.
Yeah.
Dude.
Well, I love the flow drills. So he had us do flow drills, and or I guess that'd be considered what they're called, right? Because they're just continuous one into the next.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, we missed that Shotokan. I think we definitely have that in our karate, our dojo.
Yeah.
A lot more so.
You can tell that it's a bunch of Shotokan guys because we're all just like, can't transition from one to the next, and we would get stuck in one position.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of
crank back to punch somebody kind of thing.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys sharing in my madness today.
Oh,
it was fun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so Sean, for those who don't know you or know your background, just share with us a little bit about what your karate life was like.
So I started karate at 6 years old. I watched my first class at 5, and it was at my grandpa on my mom's side pretty much threw me in there because I was an introverted kid. I was at home with him all the time, and I think he just thought it would give me some confidence and some strength, and also cheap babysitter.
Yes.
So go for it. And I started training in the small town of Perry, Florida, which is just south of Tallahassee a little bit. So if I'm in the state of Florida, it's right in the armpit, and it smells exactly the same because there's a pulp mill there. Yeah. So that's how you know. You get there when you smell it. That's where I'm from.
You're from the armpit.
Home of the world's best donuts.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. The world's best donuts, and used to have a really good barbecue restaurant there too. That it's kind of like on again, off again. You gotta know like the secret code and the special phone number to get it now. It's like a speakeasy barbecue place. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great southern town.
It really is. It really is. It's a good place to be from. It taught me a lot. But I started out under a guy named Jimmy Bowden, who was a school teacher in town, math teacher, and he was under Shihan Sugimoto, under Shotokan Kinkojuku. Shotokan Kinkojuku is a little bit different from the mainstream Shotokan. Was started out by a fellow by the last name of Okano. He trained under Gigo and Gichin Funakoshi, same class as Maso Oyama, who went on to start Kyokushin Karate, lots of pictures of them together. But he sort of went out and started his own school before Nakayama was doing his thing within the university groups, or at least that's my understanding of the history right now. So the karate that we practiced was a little bit smaller in movement, a little bit closer to Shorinryu or Shitoru. We also had weapons as part of our curriculum, so you had to do Bokata to pass Shodan. I trained under him mostly, but once I got to be a Sankyu, all my tests and everything went underneath Sugimoto.
How old were you when you tested for Shodan?
18, had to be 18.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, so I was Sankyu at like 12, and then he spaced me out all the way to 18.
Holy cow.
Yeah, he actually failed my NICU test, and everybody's in there, and they come back and say, "Sean, I don't know why he failed you." Like he was picking out little things in my teki kata, and then one guy that had been with Sugimoto for quite some time came over to me and says he wants to see if he'll come back.
Wow.
So Sugimoto was definitely old school in a lot of ways, and I think that rubbed some people the wrong way, but as I look back, I can sort of see what he was doing. He was more shaping my character than my technique. And I think he probably thought my technique needed a lot of work too first.
Okay.
So I tested with him for Shodan when I was 18. I passed Jun Shodan, which is you don't pass everything. Okay. So you get a little white stripe, and he was notorious for not passing people all the way through on the first one. before I passed full Shodan under him, my sensei decided to leave Sugimoto. I don't know the reasons why, but and he went with his original teacher, which was a fellow named John Hinken, who lived in Tampa, and he was a 5th degree under Okano. He became my teacher moving forward. I eventually graded for Sandan under him and under the youngest Okanos, Tomosaburo, I believe, Tomokatsu Okano was who I got my Sandan from.
Gotcha.
Somewhere in that time, I met Sensei Houghton, Rick Houghton,
Yeah.
while I was in chiropractic school, and he's sort of been who I've trained under mostly since. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha.
So that's my long karate story. 6 years to 33 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of your achievements in that first phase of your karate life?
Achievements? Actually, I think my karate was the best when I was like 6 to 12.
Okay.
Yeah. You have no idea of good or bad or anything like that, I just remember that, my sensei would invite my mom, like, you have to come watch, and people being like, oh, saying different things, but I never knew if I was good or not. I just was, having fun, And then I turned 11 and I went to my first big tournament, and then everything changed. It's like your perspective changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think changed about it? About your perspective?
Well, when you're 11 or 12 years old, you want to be bigger. At least for me, I wanted to be bigger. I wanted to be stronger, and I wanted to be better than everybody else. And that became what my karate and focus was all about.
Gotcha.
My first dose of competition, and then my first success in competition, I was hook, line, and sinker in that route. You get a little bit of positive feedback from it, and that was all it took for me.
Okay.
I learned a lot from it. I know I'm saying in kind of sort of a negative aspect because I've changed since then, but that's where you are. You're a teenager,
Right.
You want to be bigger, you want to be better than everybody else, stronger, faster, the whole 9 yards. But actually, the first karate tournament I went to, I got totally wiped out. It was in Vero Beach, and there were, small town, Perry, Florida. Vero Beach was like the big nice city, and it has a big nice high school. Tons of people around, and I got up. I did my weapons kata first, and nearly froze on stage. And so I was out of that one. With my kata, I got that together good enough, to finish like 4th or something, just enough to get me into regionals. And then in kumite, I was wiped out like first round, totally done out.
Oh my God.
We went home again, not knowing if I was good or bad, but probably bad. But anyways, then regional tournament came up, and I was more confident, and I won gold across the board and went on to win AAU Nationals that year, and that was sort of the beginning of the competition phase of my training,
Do you think your interest in competition shaped the way that you, not just the way, your attitude toward training, but how you physically performed? Did you change the stylistic nature of your karate? Did you change the outward form of how you moved or how your shapes looked? Or was that just, more of an attitude thing?
That's a good question. Probably so. I think I wanted to look like the guys that were winning.
Yeah.
And luckily, I've always been lucky in my life to have balance. So for whatever reason, I've always had people in my life that balance me out. And so maybe Sugimoto was exactly what I needed, because Sugimoto was not about competition at all. He would find out that I had learned Unsu and been doing it at AAU, and he'd say, I hear you've been doing funny finger kata. Because he didn't do Unsu. He didn't do that. I hear you've been doing funny finger kata. To make the weird faces, And he would always, he always had the best way to chop me down, I would think my technique would be so strong, and I go, he said, what's this? Is that dog karate? Oh, no, Shihan. So I had him on the other side to sort of balance me out. So I could never quite be in that competition group the way I really wanted to,
Yeah.
but I was still pushing in that direction, if that makes sense. I had a natural balance, which I think saved me in the end.
Gotcha.
So that phase of my life, sort of happened in an instant. I remember I had been training that way, and I think I was 17 or 18 years old, and it was kumite night in the dojo, and so sensei's calling people up, pairing people up to go and kumite, and I stood up, and nobody wanted to spar with me. Nobody wanted to go, and I looked at that, and in that moment it was like, is this really what I want to be?
Right.
Is this really where I want to be at? Like, this is not who I am.
Right.
I don't think this is even like, I would think about it later and realize it's not the purpose of karate. And I didn't want to be someone who used their skill or what have you to beat others down. I wanted to be somebody that used that skill to build other people up.
Right.
And that has totally shifted my martial art ideal moving since. So.
Is that something you discovered kind of on your own in that situation, or were there outside influences that kind of led you to that?
Always
revelation?
outside influences. I think those outside influences were always there. But when you're a hard-headed teenager, you don't know they're there.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously it took me having to realize it for myself, but it was demonstrated by Sensei Jimmy Bowden, who could have been doing a lot better things with his time and making a lot more money doing something else, but he chose to, teach poor kids karate, and I know even to this day, that not everyone in his dojo pays, and he does it because he loves it. And so I always had that influence. I also had, my mother's strong Christian influence. Basically, if you're not doing something good for the world, what are you doing with your time?
Right.
And you only get so much time.
Yeah.
And I had an inkling of it at that age, and from then on I still did tournaments for quite some time, and I had some success, but it was different, and eventually I fizzled out and didn't do them anymore. Not that I'm against tournaments by any means, but it wasn't good for me. I didn't have a healthy approach to it.
Okay. Yeah.
At that point in time. Yeah.
That being said, and that negative taste in your mouth with tournaments and stuff like that, what are some of the positive things that came out of it that you can reflect on and go, you know what, without tournament training,
yes, Well, I think having that 1 point focus, having something that you push towards day and night, that you're moving towards, a reason to drive yourself. Sometimes people say, I don't like tournament karate, and they use that as an excuse to be sort of lazy in their approach.
Yep.
It's like coffee time every time they're doing stuff, But also now that I've become a man, I can have more fun in tournament situations. If somebody wants to do a tournament style practice, I can turn that on, and I can learn from it. And you can learn sort of that engagement, the moving back and forth. There's something to be learned from sport, but I think it's more the frame in which you put it.
Yes.
Like Sugimoto used to say, tournaments maybe 10% of karate.
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, the more that's it. Like, you learn something from it, but the issue, at least for me in traditional karate, is when you make that too large a piece of your framework, you attach too many things to it. And now when I watch tournament karate and tournament kata, sometimes I'll see that the people I think actually have better technique don't win.
Right.
Because they're not as showy.
Right.
With the people that maybe are not as physically strong, athletically strong, their technique comes from the right place, but they don't win.
Yeah. There's like some like philosophical stuff going through my mind right now, because I feel like a lot of times with tournaments, people are so consumed with what I'm doing and me being better and my ego, playing the role, as opposed to looking at the interaction as a whole, like you're talking about doing it in class, training from a more tournament perspective, like you can still get so much from that, looking at it as the interaction, like you said, like looking at what that person's doing, what I'm doing. So it's less of a show, and it's more of like, it's a little bit more Budo, I guess, to it. So I think, definitely there's something that could be learned, I think, from tournaments if we all approached it that way, but maybe because we're so like focused in on ourselves and trying to bolster ourselves up, then I think people don't learn that.
Well, sport is sport. And when you're playing a game, you're playing a sport, you play to win. It's win or lose. But life isn't like that. And Budo isn't like that. Becoming a better person is not like that, you know. You may play not to lose. So that's something I've been thinking about, you know, more in my karate and the spirit behind it, you know.
I think even the drills you did today kind of reflect that, because it's not really a win or lose. You're not necessarily trying to dominate. You're looking for weaknesses and strengths in both your movement and your partner's movement, but you're caught in this, you know, infinity circle, and you're going back and forth and adding little instances on there, like little extra things that you're adding in the drill, but essentially you're continuing this connection with the person, and you're looking at it as a whole, as opposed to what I'm doing versus what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of a metaphor for my whole approach to karate now. You know, I constantly want to keep the conversation going. So.
Wow, why do I feel so immature right now? I'm just like, wow.
I got this.
I do karate to win. I want to dominate. I'm like, I really feel small right now.
Well, just kind of a side note, like what you mentioned earlier about like giving back. When you were in Colorado, you were involved in teaching those guys and that fraternity thing. That was so cool. Like, how long did you do that?
I taught at Street Frat for, gosh, was it 2-3 years, something like that? Yeah. So Street Fraternity was a drop-in facility for at-risk youth, specifically young men from the ages of 12 to 22. But really, if they were a young adult and they needed a space, that was what we did. And it was created by a guy named Dave Stalls, who's a former football player and just an awesome guy. He intentionally put this place in the traditionally the most dangerous neighborhood in all of Colorado. It's called the East Colfax end of Denver. With the intention of it being a safe space for gang members and that sort of thing. But what happened is Denver started to engage in refugee programs. So a lot of your refugee families would end up here because it's the cheapest into town. So we had a lot of guys from Ethiopia, Southeast Asia, Congo, Kenya, and then of course Central America and that sort of thing, and everybody's sort of mingling together with, and you're not talking about people that are used to street life, you're talking about people that are sort of used to family life or life in a refugee camp, and then you place them, boom, in this traditionally violent neighborhood, and there's just a lot to happen. So in that space they did a nightly meal. They had games, they had a computer room, they had a quiet room, meditation/conference room, and then they had an aggressives room, because they recognized that young men in that demographic, you can't ignore that they have an aggressive side to their nature.
Right.
And I felt like once Dave and I developed a relationship, that karate was the best entry point for that. I mean, you engage with your aggressive nature and you learn to sort of take it to a higher place. I mean, you look at that monster, that demon, and realize that, and then balance it with the philosophy of Budo, and what comes out is a more creative individual, a more hopeful individual, someone who uses that aggression to make their society a better place. You know, aggression becomes dynamic action, I guess I should say. I don't know how much traditional karate I taught.
Really?
Yeah, because they want to fight, man.
So just throw some blows.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'm starting out doing these sorts of punches, and some of the guys were, God bless them, they stuck with it. They really, really liked me, believed in me, and they stayed with it. But then a lot of people would come and go, and eventually they'd be like, man, but what if somebody swings on me when I'm at the basketball court? And I'd be like, wow, we're not there yet. Like, how long? 2 years. I might not be alive again. So anyways, it ended up changing the training a little bit, but I think the overall spirit of it was the same. We always started with bowing. We always started with etiquette. Even though we engaged in aggressive practice, and it didn't maybe not look like a karate practice all the time, it had the underlying karate etiquette is what I was really trying to establish there. And it was definitely one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I grew more than I ever would have, and just, it was awesome.
Honestly, what is like traditional karate training though? I mean, if you look at maybe what it was initially, it wasn't as structured as classes are now, and it's something that we've talked about quite a bit, because like we feel like application-based training is just, it's not really in what karate is now. A lot of people don't really focus on how to apply the karate that you're doing. A lot of it's either sport oriented or it's oriented toward children, so there's not a lot of application. So I think that incorporating that, I don't think you're really pulling away from like a solid karate class. If anything, you're enhancing what they're learning as they're learning it. Even if they are beginners, they're going to get better at applying it. You're just starting it early.
Right.
Yeah, and all arts are fluid, right?
Yeah.
They're always changing. They always have different focus.
And as a teacher, you're essentially applying the principle of teaching. It's not like it has to follow this structure. If you completely understand what you're teaching, you're taking the principle and you can break it down to the level of what they actually need at that time.
Yeah. That's what I think I want from my karate training practice. Should I ever become a teacher again, is using it as almost like a healing method, and finding out what that person needs. Obviously, we have to be martial.
Right.
We have to stay true to our tradition, but within that communication between teacher and student, that's really what's most important.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with Sensei Houghton. We were at a seminar in Portland. This is just before I moved out west. And I found this special beer called Vertical Epic, so I took it to him. I was like, Sensei, we got to drink this beer together, And so we're talking about things, and he says, we started talking about karate and what the big picture in karate is all about, solving the world's problems, And he said something along the lines of, I really don't think the karate itself is important. And I was like, at that point in time in my training, like, Sensei's lost his marbles, What are you talking about? Of course the karate is important. He was like, no, it's just it's a venue. It's a means, You could be doing anything else, but any way that you're developing human connection, and taking people to a further place on their ride, their journey through life, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
I still get caught up in the karate's.
Well, you still need to do karate.
You still have to do karate. It's mandatory for life.
I haven't got to that place. It's not just a means for me yet, but wow. Awesome. Let's talk about Rick. And I was there at the seminar the first time y'all met. There was in Orlando. It was a Steve Ubel seminar, and Rick was off in the corner and being Rick.
Yeah.
He's warming up and kind of moving around. And I looked at it and said, damn, that dude's pretty intense. Like, he seems pretty intense. Sean's like, hey man, I'm gonna train with that guy. I kind of looked at him like, all right, you go first. I'll let you see how that works. And I literally stepped back and watched, and it was the weirdest thing, because it was like the initiation of a relationship that, if you looked from the outside in, was so obvious. Like, these guys, like, you clicked off right off the bat, and it was like, wow, maybe I should have been first. I was like, damn it. But obviously it was the two unique personalities that came together that really kind of clicked and gone. So, but it just astonished me that when you saw him, I saw this intense karate guy, and you're like, dude, I'm there. And I was just like that, because no one else in the room wanted to. It was obvious that no one else was like, no one wanted to train with him, because he was, Rick is Rick.
Yeah, he was making some noises over there.
Yeah, dude, his gi was snapping, those kicks were straight. Yeah, it was on, you know. And being JK guys or with JK backgrounds, we're like, oh boy, that guy's gonna beat the living crap out of me, you know. And you know, it was a really cool thing to see in the moment, but to reflect on it and see where the relationship has gone from there is like, dude, I got that whole situation so wrong. It's like, I don't know, every time I talk to you, bro, I feel like I'm like, man, I'm missing the picture. You know what I'm saying?
Come on,
like,
man.
and I enjoy those conversations with
Right.
you know, because it's this thing, it's like, you know, you said you always had that opposing force in your life that balanced you out.
Right.
You're definitely that in my life. Like, I get so headstrong and aggressive, and you're like, no, man, just wait it out, dude. And you're like, I'm like, you know what? You're right. I should just wait it. I should shut up and wait it out, you know? So
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
He's the aggressive person for you.
You complete me. No. No. In our relationship, you know, you've always been the more practical voice, the one that cuts through the BS and tells it like it is, and I've always appreciated that about you and our relationship every time. So I can't tell you the tremendous respect.
So literally, my advice to him is hit them.
Yeah, right.
Pretty
If
much.
they're not listening to you, just knock the living out of them.
Smack them hard.
Yeah.
Smack 'em
yes,
around.
knock the living out
But
of them.
getting back to that day, the Sensei Hotten day. Actually, I remember when we first saw Sensei Hotten, he was stretching, and I turned to you and I said, "Dude, that guy's good." And you're like, "Well, how do you know?" I said, "Look at his feet." And he was kind of backwards stretch, but he had this thing where his feet were like kind of curving and gripping the ground like a gecko or something. And I was like, I had only seen that in like pictures before, you know, where people make a stance and it made that sort of grippy turning because it was torsioning so much, that connection to the ground. And then I had always struggled in my karate with stiffness, and I had not quite put the points together between making power but being relaxed. I thought for me, power was powering forward, being bigger, faster, stronger, competition, make my muscles bigger, you know. But Sensei immediately, the first time I saw him first time I saw, it's an experience when Sensei does a technique, right? What he was doing, the way he was able to effortlessly create a massive amount of force was appealing to me. And then also to see that all the structure was correct. And I just knew that was where I wanted my karate to go. I was supposed to learn from this person.
Yeah.
And so that weekend, I put together all of my best pickup lines and tried to figure out how I was going to make myself a part of this guy's life. Then we went to there was like a lunch afterwards, and I heard him talking to somebody else, and he happened to mention a cartoon, and I was like, ooh, I can use that. So then I said, so Sensei, Rick, so you've got to be an artist like outside of karate, right? You know, whenever I listen to you talk, you know, the verbiage that you use. My father's an artist, you know, and it went on from there. And so then, you know, he invited me to Sarasota to come train, and I think I found that more so than the physicality of his technique, that the philosophy towards karate was like he was someone that was on the same rope as me, but quite a long ways down further. And so we just kind of naturally had a natural connection from there. You know, he became my sensei quite easily because of that. It was just the next step.
Yeah.
So,
What kind of physical things, I mean, I know that you said that you worked pretty stiff before. What kind of physical things have you changed since training primarily with Rick?
Well, it's more of a method of practice, you know, rather than harder, faster, stronger. I try to start out really relaxed. If I'm going to learn the movement and really learn the technique, I try to take all of the muscle out of it. Intentionally take all the muscle out of it and break the technique down to what is most essential, you know. Can I relax all of my muscles as if they are goo, but have good structure
Right.
and good timing. Okay,
Right.
and then I start to build from there. Then I start to build speed and inflection points, and then I try to find out where I need to put power into. So starting from nothing and then building towards something. And I think training with Sensei has helped me with that, because he's encouraging everybody to relax the whole time and encouraging this fluid motion, which totally counterintuitive to the way I was used to doing technique before.
Yeah.
But the way I've embraced that approach over time, it's changed my karate totally. And all of the nice lines that I was working for before have come naturally when you just, you pay attention to the process. What's the principle, what's the essence of the technique? Everything else feels like it just comes on naturally when you're doing it right. I'm certainly not there by any means, but,
It's interesting.
Listen up, kiddos. Listen up.
It's interesting the way you worded some of that, because the book I was mentioning earlier, it's like Essentialism or whatever it's called.
Right.
And that guy also has a podcast, Greg McEwen, and he talks about whereas most people, whenever they try to master something, they will take all these ideas and they'll try to whittle them down. Instead of that, he says you start with nothing and then you add what's essential so that you don't have all of those things, I guess, necessarily to sort through. I don't know exactly how you would approach that with karate, but it's kind of going through my head as you're saying that.
Right.
Like, what is the purpose of this technique? What is the purpose of this day of training? Or what's the intention of what we're doing today, as opposed to, we have all of these things. We can't do that. Let's take this out. Instead of all of those things, maybe starting with the principle and then building on top of that is an idea.
Yeah.
So.
I think the at least I think in karate is a lot like life. In the beginning you're trying to get strong, so you're trying to add on all of this stuff. You're trying to add on all of these techniques, and you're building your strength, right? And then at some point, well, you're gonna hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
You can't go any further that way.
Yep.
And so then you have to break everything back down.
Yeah.
You have to break it all down, unlearn all of those habits,
Yeah.
and like you said, come to what's essential. Essential, and then maybe you can go up again, or maybe you just stay with what's essential. I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. When we were before we had like a coaching relationship with Steve Ubel Sensei, we were trying to learn from his ideas, but it was through video, and obviously like with Glenn, he would try to break things down, and Jeremiah had talked to Steve about it privately about some of the stuff that we were doing, and Steve was like, "You're making this way too complicated.
Yeah.
You're just adding too many layers. There's too many parts that aren't actually connected. You're trying to add all of these pieces." And we see this sometimes, I think, with instructors, where they'll have little things that they'll kind of focus on and they'll add it into their training, and it's the new thing, and it's a little bit gimmicky in some cases,
Right.
but they add in all these little extra parts that are missing the main point, and it's distracting from what's actually going on, and we're making it too complicated. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
But that's just really interesting. I guess it's human nature that we try to layer on all these things, and when in essence we don't really need all of that.
No.
But that's the natural progression as an artist, right? Is
To go through that and start over.
well, no, it's you're so critical of yourself that at a certain point you realize I'm putting too much crap on top of my art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I got to refine myself, and I feel like in martial arts alone, no matter what style or whatever you're doing, it's efficiency, and efficiency looks different in everybody's picture or the frame or whatever, but that's what we do as artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can look at people that draw and everything else. You ever seen those videos where they have like they draw the dragon, it's just one brush stroke, and they're able to show the different scales and everything, and this guy's constantly doing this weird thing with his hand,
inflections in the wrist,
right?
yeah.
But at the end of it, you look at it and you go, what?
Right.
How did he get all that detail with one brush, one stroke?
Yeah.
Kind of like our karate.
Yeah. That's what we're trying to get.
How do we get all that detail in one technique, one movement?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we should all be dragons.
No, it's not what I'm saying. Once again, young grasshopper.
I think that was what I was trying to work on a little bit with those entering techniques today.
Yeah.
Everything should be, one intention, one breath, even though it seems like you've got to go around that leg.
Right.
And it doesn't make sense that you should be able to do that in one motion. You know, if you should have to do two.
Right.
Or can you make it one? Can you, kind of work it? I think that's like you said, that's art. You know.
Yeah, that is the art.
And I think that's a lot harder for people who are a little bit more like logically minded, like I tend to be, because you think of things in such a mechanistic way.
Yeah.
You don't think about in that particular instance, like the person is stepping in and you're trying to, it's like an abbreviated triangle step, sort of. You're kind of curving around the person, but you're not necessarily moving your back leg if you can help it. You might have to, but it could end up moving because you move your front leg. Anyway, just all of these application ideas.
Depends.
It's all, I know, that's kind of the artist point of it. It's like, we can think of it in these exact movements and exact motions, but once you start doing it, then that's something totally other, I think.
Yeah.
But it's hard you can't teach that, I don't think.
Right. Yeah. No. You have to go through different phases. I mean, you have to learn, have been through that to get to this.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's the way our life is. And the more I do karate, and the more I advance, the more I think, oh gosh, this has always been there. Oh, this is just the way the body's supposed to move. I mean, if you ever watch like babies move, I'm like, man, they got good karate. They move from the hips. They got that relaxed heaviness thing going on.
Look at them
man.
squats.
Yeah. How did we get away from that? But you had to go through a certain phase to open your eyes to it. You know.
Yeah.
I think, and sometimes when we get more advanced in our karate, we forget that. You have to go through certain phases. Not that it's right or it's wrong, or doing basics is wrong. Like, no, you should do basics, but at some point, it depends on where you are in your training. If you keep doing it the exact same way with the exact same feeling for 30 years, then you see what I'm saying? You're not growing. Yeah.
Good impersonator, but not an original person, right?
Yeah. What are you learning?
Yeah.
What are you learning?
I think Steve said kindergarten karate.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And tradition
Really
for tradition's sake.
Kindergarten karate, but
Yeah.
Tradition for tradition's sake.
oh man, I hate that.
Yeah. Kind of speaking of that, what would you, if you could look at the karate community as a whole, what would you think would be maybe a positive thing that's coming out of the general direction of karate, or what is a negative thing? Or do you feel like we're headed in a positive direction? I know it's difficult to say because there's so many different groups and everybody's doing different things.
Yeah. I think everybody's in different places, but having been able to train across the United States at least, and getting, from my perspective, I feel like the idea of really rigid organizations is sort of going out of style.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate things like we did today, where everybody's coming together and sort of cutting out, how are we going to do Basai Dai this year? Is there
I didn't think about that, yeah.
But really getting down to, what works for you, what works. I mean, karate's been here long enough. We've got enough people that have done it have enough wisdom in it that we can all learn from each other. And it's becoming a lot more organic that way.
Yeah.
The advancement of the art is becoming much more local and organic.
Would you attribute that to like more interconnectedness because of like social media and things like that?
Certainly, yeah. Everybody's got YouTube. We can all reach out. I mean, Jeremiah and I grew up 2 hours from one another, right? Basically. But we didn't meet until we were in our 20s.
My 30s or 20s.
Yeah.
I'm the old guy.
Yeah.
I was 17 when I met these guys.
God, let's avoid talking about ages on the podcast, because that just makes me want to curl in my
Fine, it's fine. We're all adults here now.
Yeah. But no, that's true. I mean, there's so many ideas out there now, which is good, and I think that's great. The dialogue that's able to happen and advancing technique that way is great. I think what I would personally like to see more is focus on etiquette and the do and the importance of it, and the big ideals of karate and the Dojo Kun. I mean, if I've been listening to these Okinawan guys on the interviews, you know, on YouTube, they've got these long ones. I sent you one from a Shotokan guy, and at the end of them, all of them say, you know, the purpose of karate is really to make strong forces within a community, individuals who are positive aspects of their community that purvey hope to the rest of society. You know, that's the real goal.
Yeah.
Like that reshapes everything, I think, when you think about it in those terms.
If you even think about that from a historical perspective, that's essentially what they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at it from a self-defense perspective, they were literally creating beacons of hope in their community.
Yes.
That's really, I never thought about that before.
Yes. And it's stronger than, I think karate training is a very powerful thing in that it works on an instinctual level. You don't even realize how it is affecting your life or who it's making you. I mean, I'm naturally a very introverted person. I'm most happy on the back porch, not the front porch, the back porch, with a cup of coffee, you know, and that's me. But my whole life, I've sort of been pushed in leadership positions.
Right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is from karate, the presence that you achieve, you know. It happens on such a subconscious, natural level when you train karate, that the confidence, the spirit, the quiet in moments of chaos, and those things all by themselves are powerful in a social setting. You know, it's not something that a lot of people have, in people in positions of power. But if we can do that and teach others to do that, and put ourselves in positions within the community where we're able to have influence that way, then that's how you make a place better.
I think even just looking at the first precept of the Dojo Kun, like that idea of seeking perfection, if you are completely, if that's instilled in you, then even if you are an introverted person, you have this ability to not only be able to pursue it for yourself and your own interactions and interpersonal interactions, but then also in the way that you lead other people and the way that you teach them and the way that you want to bring them up. It's not that they have to be perfect, but you are helping lay out a path for them that allows for excellence, as opposed to like the guys in the street frat, like being completely surrounded by things that are pulling him this way and that way, at least giving them some kind of a guiding reference. Yeah.
It's interesting on that, though. I mean, anybody that does that kind of work will tell you that they learn more from the people they're trying to help.
Yeah.
You know, naturally, people in that sort of situation, being able to relax in a chaotic situation is essential for your life.
Yeah.
And that determines who's going to be successful and who's not going to be, you know, and sometimes it is literally life or death in communities like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. For those of us that are in more privileged situations, we have to create structures that remind us. And I think that's where karate comes in. It's not appropriate in our society to speak loudly, to ki, you know, to move quickly, to punch people. You know, Jeremiah.
Yeah,
It's not.
You can't just punch people. It doesn't solve all the problems.
You never do that, and it's probably a good thing that you don't.
Yeah.
That's okay. But that aspect of your mentality is still there, and so for us in a more civilized society, we still need to have a safe and structured environment where we can engage on that and learn that skill. You know?
The crucible of the dojo.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what this is.
Yeah, crucible.
Awesome.
It's like pressure cooker.
Basically. Yeah.
Yes.
So, this is where it started with this question.
Okay.
What are you working on?
Oh, I'm changing the way I work out.
Okay.
Okay, I'm being more regimented currently. I will set a timer, and I have an idea. Okay, I'm going to practice Teki Shodan, and I've got 10 minutes, and I have to keep moving. So every time may not be wow, wow, wow. You know, sometimes I may do it slow, and by the end of it, I'm pretty gassed. But it's interesting to watch how my body changes, Then I have to pay attention to my breath. I try to listen to my body through that timing, and but also while keeping focused on the kata the whole time. So I practice a lot of zazen, so I try to have that sort of focus while I'm moving through, and just pay attention to what feels good, what works, what's good timing. And it's interesting what comes out of your body when you do things that way. Yeah.
Do you feel like using the timer, like, because a lot of people, whenever they try to do things on their own, the entire habit of just training, like getting over that mental barrier, like I don't want to do it, is very difficult for a lot of people. Do you feel like that helps, like having a set time?
It does. The timer pushes me to keep going, to keep moving, and I also know, okay, we all have lives and families and jobs, and so I've got 30 minutes today. Timer starts now. And generally, I think most of us, when it comes to individual practice, we don't want to do it to begin with. But the timer helps me initiate it and keep going, and then by 10 minutes in, I don't want to stop. You know?
I've done it a few times where I've had to set a timer in order to make myself train, like in order to stay consistent with something. And it's the same thing, just like walk through the kata until the timer goes off, and it's like, oh, well, actually, that wasn't that bad. But in your head, before you do it, it's just like, I don't want to have to warm up and go through it, and it sucks, and I'm by myself, and I'm cold, or whatever. Anyway,
I think it's also, that was a strong part of like the sport aspect of my life too. When you had that timer and you had somebody pushing you to be better, to do better, to push past your mental blocks. And then when I switched and it became more about listening to your body, sometimes you can become a little too soft in that. You still need something that's going to keep that edge, keep you pushing a little bit further than you would like to go. And the timer does that for me.
I can see that. So Jeremiah, what you working on?
I'm still like soaking in things. That's the cool thing about
Sean's presence.
When I'm around Sean, you know, it's this interesting kind of dynamic where he's talking about himself and he's relating what's going on with him and how he approaches things. And I go, you know what? I'm lacking that. I need some of that. You know, and I get self-absorbed, and he's still like saying, you know, it's just kind of this thing, and I need more people like that in my life. Like, just kind of, it always challenges what I do as a person. You know, for me, personal training has always been this ability to escape what's going on in the world and just be in my little 10-year-old self again and at the dojo in front of a mirror. You know what I mean? Escaping from all that. Turn the music on, do things, and just kind of go at it, free will in a sense. And, you know, I need to grow up a little bit when it comes to personal training and kind of get to my own path. But particularly right now, I'm still trying to keep my shoulders down. You know, it's the small things that seem to always be hard to work on. And right now, it's the habit that I punch with my shoulder. I'll engage with that snap, you know. And, you know, taking it back to GN, the double punch at the end. You know, it's not the position for me that makes it awkward. It's the desire to be strong with the technique that my mind immediately goes, tighten up. Right? And it's that relaxed heaviness of getting the technique down. So it's, you know, I don't, to be honest with you, since last time we had a podcast, I really haven't trained that much on my own.
Same.
But it's been like 5-minute increments here and there, standing in front of the mirror and doing this thing, you know, and then if I'm doing class and I'm doing a couple, you know, reps behind it, I don't like, when I'm teaching class, I have people go through the class, I hate being in front of them and doing it because I'm when I do the karate, I'm focused totally on myself. Like, I'm feeling what I'm doing, I'm trying to figure out what's better for me, and I don't want to stand in front of people and be lost in my own thought. Because if I'm in front of someone, I feel like it's my responsibility to be focused on them.
That's the difference.
You know, so, but right now it's just shoulder thing, and I think that's one of those things that will always will diminish, but sometimes it'll still be there. It's so ingrained in us, especially, you know, being a laborer most of my adult life and picking things up. It was never like, gotta get good position. It's just like grab it and move it, you know, grab the weed ear and go. And I find myself like this position, literally, you know, is the edge of your shoulders up, shoulders down, and then you do my karate. What happens? My shoulders up, my shoulders down, and it's just,
Want to getting in the way of your technique a little bit.
yeah, my want to always gets in the way.
Yeah.
My want to always gets in the way. That's the thing.
I do the same.
I know for a fact the spiritual, mental aspect of my karate is probably the weakest part of my karate.
Mm.
I'm easily sidetracked, or I'm very emotional. Not like, oh, you hit me in the face, but
Yeah,
more
he
like
is like that actually.
on the inside. On the inside. But I'm easily, like, if I do something good, I'm like, yeah. Or if I mess something up, I'm like, man. And my facial expressions, if you train with me, you know if I'm having a good day or a bad day. It's either I'm grinning from ear to ear or I'm scowling.
Yeah.
You know, and it has nothing to do with the person in front of me. It has everything to do with what I'm doing. And I know that, to me, is where that fluctuation needs to be kind of mellowed out.
Yeah.
You know, and have a more serious approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Too much of a kid, though.
If I could just interject real quick, I think being a perfectionist is like part of what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wanting to get each and every thing right. I think there's a time and place for that. But Sonny Kim, when we trained with him in Cincinnati, he came up to me after class and he says, "You're too focused on getting it right every time."
Yeah.
He says, "This one is this one, the next one is the next one.
Yeah.
This one is this one, the next one is the next one." And something about him, he pegged it on the head, you know. And being able to have a little bit of forgiveness in the technique. If that one was that one, it was a little off, I'm going to try it again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I associate trying it again with you suck.
I didn't.
Maybe that's what he was really trying to say.
But that's just where I'm at in my own training, you know. And good thing is, as the years go on, I accept that more and more, and it doesn't make me feel less of a person anymore. It's just I'm stuck in that mentality where I can't just break that cycle, you know. But I'm sure I'll mature more eventually.
Yeah.
But I like that aspect of training too. I like that, like, emotional roller coaster because
Okay.
no, it's not like I want to be sad or angry. It's this whole, like, I feel connected to that moment. I feel there's a rawness to it. And I love, when I do karate, I love the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I used to do, like you said, in tournament karate is for the accolades and the approval of the people.
Yeah.
Right? Being that guy that when you walk, like, in the dojo, I never wanted to be that guy that no one would train with, you know, and I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I walked on the tournament floor, I wanted people to go like, oh shit, he's here. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wanted that.
Yeah.
It was just like, that's right. This is what it's about.
Right.
And it took me a long time to get away from that type of karate.
Yeah.
Right? To understand that that's not really what it's about. But I enjoy that rawness. I enjoy the connection there. So.
Yeah. Exercise.
Hmm?
It's exercise. I mean, if you think of the root word of exercise, you know, you're.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I know. It is what it is.
Yeah,
I try
that's
not
awesome.
to let when I teach, I try to keep my students to understand that it's just it is what it is. You know,
Yeah.
you're doing what you're doing because it's an evil sword. You know, the two
Yeah, I
sides
can
of that
see
sword. It helps you, but at the same time, it can hold you back. So,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah. Well, kind of to that point. I can see both sides. Like, I can see where someone's desire to become better can actually be a hindrance because it can almost be a distraction. But there is something kind of fun about, like, you're in the middle of training and you have a specific thing that you're working on and, like, you don't get it on this technique and so you're a little frustrated, but you try to get on the next technique. So you are actively trying, but I think the art of applying that is, like, work on the thing without it becoming a distraction, I guess, from the principle of the class. Because I don't know, that's probably a lot harder whenever you're more of a beginner because a lot of the mistakes that you make are so big and they apply, like, they're everywhere, and if you don't get it all, like, the shape of it quite right and you're trying to work on the shape of what you're doing and then you're trying to do this more advanced concept, it's difficult. But when you're more advanced and it's a small muscular contraction or a small like timing issue that you're working on, then, you know, you can work on that, I think, simultaneously while working on other things because you need so many repetitions to get it done. I don't know. There's a balance there, I think. I think that there's beauty in both sides. And no! Okay, well, the camera died, apparently, but we can still talk. But I think there's there's a benefit to both. There's a benefit to just turning your mind off and just doing what's going on in the class, but then there's also a benefit to being able to actually train on what you're focusing on, so you have more.
That's what you're working on?
No, actually, what I'm working
okay.
on is I'm just
Alright.
kind of throwing that out there. So what I'm working on still is the last 2 punches in Jin, and kind of the same idea of like how to generate power in that movement without it turning into like a big shouldery technique, even though I'm really small. So overall, like I've spent a lot of the past 10 years of training trying to slow down and like be more technically proficient and things like that. And so right now I'm trying to, in a lot of cases, like I have a lot of the technical stuff down, and sometimes slowing down too much causes things to fall apart. So trying to kind of put it back together again and go a little bit faster on certain things. And then I've actually done it so much with slowing down that even when I go a little bit faster, I can actually now still feel if something's not quite right. So kind of still playing on that same idea. I can still go back and continue to work on stuff whenever we're moving quickly across the floor in class. But I can feel it better now. I can still feel what I'm working on, even though I'm not moving slowly. So anyway, just trying to move faster in general on certain techniques, and then reset at the end of the technique and kind of do it again on the next one. Generate more power on the technique as opposed to just placing techniques. I do have a big problem with that. So those are kind of the ideas I'm working on.
I think that's a big progression point in our karate, is the ability to accept one technique for what it is, and move on, and just that's what that was. This is what this is.
Right.
I mean, Rick says that all the time. Oh, it's one technique. It's that moment, in the moment thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a big progression, at where we're at, So
Yeah. Definitely.
struggles of a karateka.
Yeah.
I looked into the camera like this
The
stuff.
struggle is real, yo.
I gave it the
camera is dead.
Huh?
So the camera's dead.
Oh man.
We
Gotta
broke
go.
it with our.
It's fine. We just too much knowledge.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
couldn't handle it.
I think we didn't spend enough time in makeup first.
Yeah.
Oh, there we
At
go.
least for
It's
myself.
digital
We're just
correction.
we're so shiny from all of our
It was
sweat
the
and
filters
stuff.
that died that killed it.
That's what it was.
All right.
Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you.
Thank
This
you
was
guys
fun.
for having me. This was awesome.
Heck yeah.
Thank you.
Cool beans, man. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.